Hello and welcome back, First Class fans. Once again, it is time for This Week in the FCL. We've got some great matches coming your way this week. We're going to talk about Maxwell Haddad versus Robert Adams in our main event. And to start things off, Adams' very own brother, the gentleman himself, Chris Adams, will be taking on Alex Marzona. It's all gone down, and we're going to tell you what happened and talk a little bit about all the action this week in the FCL. And of course, we're joined by a wonderful special guest, as we so often are, from a certain point of view. It's going to be Jillian Marie talking all the matches, all the action. Let's get into everything that happened this week in the FCL. All right, welcome, First Class fans, and welcome to our guest, Jillian Marie, joining us here on This Week in the FCL. Of course, I'm being joined by one of my regular co-hosts as well. Keith Kilduff is here. We're going to talk everything that's going down. And Jillian, as you know, she is the co-host of A Certain Point of View. What a wonderful show that I encourage you to check out and subscribe to, of course. And you might have seen her as well on the Schmoedown doing those post-match interviews. We are thrilled to have her here. And we're going to swing right into it and get on with the show. But first, real quick, I just want to say, Jillian, welcome to you.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me. The matches this past week were a doozy, so I'm excited to talk about it.
Absolutely. And I just want to ask as well one super quick question. You've been a fan of the FCL. You've been watching. Who do you think is a standout in the FCL so far for you?
You can't do that to me because I have so many legit friends who are in the FCL, like people who have literally been in my home before. So you can't do that to me. I can't break people's hearts, man. But my friends know who they are, and they know who I've got their back for sure.
All right, that was a little mean of me. Of course, at least 4 of the competitors might find out a few things about what you think about them as we talk about it this week. But before we get into the matches with our own stats man, Keith Kilduff, I know he's going to do a great breakdown for us. We're going to start off with a little bit of news, and we start, unfortunately, once again, with a moment where we have to take a second and send out our well wishes. Not that that's a problem for us, of course, but that someone would need that to go out is unfortunate. This week, it's Emma Fife who has tested positive for COVID. We wish you, Emma, of course, a swift and a painless and a trouble-free recovery. We hope everything is back soon so I can drop in on one of your Twitch streams one of these weeks and check out what you're playing, and everybody else can enjoy your wonderful personality. You've always been kind the few times we have met myself, and just get well to you, Emma Fife. I'm sure Keith and Jill, you mirror those thoughts.
Oh, 100%. Emma's a sweetheart, so I hope she gets through this really quickly and no side effects, and she can go trucking along to all her fun stuff that she always does.
100%. Fife for life, Andrew. Fife for life.
Yep.
You know, I'm a huge Fife Club fan. Keith, I've been watching since the early days of The Odd Couple, Rachel Cushing, Clark Wolf. Oh, what a great time to be a Schmoedown fan that was. We're going to move on as well to a happier piece of news for somebody who's been on this show a couple of times. You know him, you love him, or maybe you love to hate him. He was the spoiler. Now he's in the movie Trivia Schmoedown. Nick Harley will be joining the teams tournament this year alongside Jacoby Bancroft. We can confirm here at This Week in the FCL, Chaos Theory will be the team representing the Stars in the Schmoedown teams tournament. We are so thrilled for the opportunity for Nick and to hear that he's still doing so well. Obviously, he's been lighting it up in his matches, so kudos to you, Nick. Thoughts, Keith?
I think it's a big statement. It's a big, plus to him and Jacoby that Roxy would give them the gig in the teams tournament. What I am extremely interested to see is where they are ranked, because obviously there's 2 dangerous teams in Corruption and Danger Zone who potentially you could see them getting matched up with in round 1. If they avoid them and get a slightly easier draw, but I don't think there are any easy draws in this 8-team tournament, then they could go on a run. But listen, it's great that Nick's getting backed. It's great that Jacoby's getting backed.
Yeah, Jill, I don't know if you checked this out, if you watched any of Nick Harley in the Schmoedown. I assume, obviously, that you have. He's been very impressive so far in my mind, and now representing the team's tournament with Jacoby. I've loved their chemistry so far. Do you think they'll do well?
I think they will, and I love their name, Chaos Theory. I think is such a perfect name for them, because what did Nick do right before he left to be in the Schmoedown? He caused a whole freaking lot of chaos. So that name, Chaos Theory, is just absolutely perfect. And the thing with the teams tournament is there's really no quote unquote like, oh, this is going to be an easy team, because there's really not. This teams tournament is stacked, and I think Nick and Jacoby are going to prove that they belong to be there.
Well, as an old school pro wrestling fan, I know that it was always when the teams were the strongest, when you had a great roster of teams, that a pro wrestling organization was really at its peak. That's when you had a lot of great characters, a lot of people who were doing a lot of hard work in the ring and out. And it's the same in the Schmoedown. After 8 seasons, there are no easy roads when you come into a tournament like this. But Nick Harley, from this week in the FCL, obviously, we've got a special place in our hearts for you. So good luck to you in that teams tournament, and Jacoby as well. Hopefully you'll both do amazingly. That's going to do it for the news for this week, and we're going to turn it over to our pal Keith with all the stats, all the breakdowns, as we talk about both the great matches that happened, Alex Marzonia versus the Gentleman, and, of course, Maxwell Haddad versus Robert Adams. Keith, what have we got?
Let's do this. FCL21 kicked off this week with a fight between Alex Marzona and Chris Adams. Alex looking for a little bit of payback from the push from Adams from a few weeks ago in his little promo. As we moved into round 1, it finished 6-5 to Chris. Chris keeping up with his season average of in and around kind of 6.5, whereas Alex was down 2 on his previous match against Aaron Turner. He got 7 in that, and he only got 5 in this one. A couple of interesting questions in here. They both kicked off in the animated question, knowing what household object Chip was in Beauty and the Beast. Alex misses the comedies question of the hustle, the Anne Hathaway 2019 comedy, saying the heist. Chris then balances up the negative answer, then not knowing Tessa Thompson in Men in Black International. Margot Robbie is referenced in Oscars. David O. Russell is mentioned in Crime Thriller as the director of American Hustle. Chris can't pull that, saying David Ayer, probably knowing David, but just couldn't realize what the last bit was. And then we kind of round out the round 2010s. Alex not knowing Girl on the Train, the 2016 Emily Blunt movie, saying The Woman on the Train. Didn't wager an answer to the famous actor-actress question of what actor featured in Hunger Games, Star Wars, and Planet of the Apes franchise, the answer being Woody Harrelson. And we finished up with JJ directing a Star Wars, Star Trek, and Mission Impossible franchise movie. Jill, what were your thoughts on this card and this match before a question was asked?
This card, this entire day was a rough one for me, because I am very good friends with everybody who was on this card. So I was like, wow, thanks for like torturing me with this. But it was fun. You could tell that they were there to have a good time. And yes, Enye did have some vengeance to cause, because how dare he get pushed?
How dare
you? How freaking dare you? So I knew this was going to be a fun one going into it.
Andrew, 1-0 played 1-1, but I felt like Alex was potentially the favorite coming in, even if he's not up after round 1.
Well, I think watching the previous performances from them, obviously Chris Adams does about his normal in round number 1. And he's a good round 1 performer. I mean, putting up an average of 6 points, staying consistent is not a bad thing to be. But yeah, I think if you look at the matches as they've already played out, most people are probably saying Marzonia might play a little tighter, might play a little more controlled, and potentially put more points on the board. I'm actually quite angry at Alex Marzonia, because this is a place where he had a round that would normally be something I would want to talk about. You know me, Keith, I talk about endlessly to these competitors the strategy of the game, in particular the usage of your JTE rules. And this is a round where I would be all over Alex about not using his JTs. He was so close on a couple of questions. He was right there, and you could tell he was when you were watching it. But he's going to make a fool of me a little later in this match, and I'm sure we'll get to that when we get to it. No JTEs used. Normally, this would be what I would rag on, but a decent round from both guys at nothing less than we would expect.
Let's move into round 2. Wheel comes up. It's an interesting kind of makeup. We're seeing Fast and the Furious balanced with Marvel. We're seeing scores and soundtracks. Robin Williams. Horror comes in. I'm not sure where that potentially could have sat on either competitor. Chris Nolan, Drew Barrymore, coming of age, 90s and movie release dates. Marzonia's deferred to, spins first on 90s, decides he doesn't want to keep it, and then gets scores and soundtracks on the second one. You're thinking with his background, he should do okay with this all in all. Goes 6 of 8, consistent with his first match. Gives up a 2-point steal though on the second question, being what 80s Tom Cruise film has him dancing to old-time rock and roll. He says Big, getting obviously confused Tom Hanks and Tom Cruise. Risky Business being the answer, which Chris takes. And then Chris is up, gets spinner's choice, does a little bit of character work, happy that he gets to kind of decide and dictate what he wants to do, takes the category of Marvel, sweeps it 8 for 8 for the second time this season in round 2, knows Dennis Leary is Captain Stacy in The Amazing Spider-Man, knows John Travolta is in 2004's Punisher, knows Lawrence Fishburne is the voice of Silver Surfer, and knows that Kingpin leaves roses for his victims in 2013's Daredevil. Jill, 1 point lead has just extended to a 5, and now Chris is 16-11 up in the box seat completely.
Yeah, I got very nervous for Alex in this, because being in a 5-point deficit, you never want to be in. And him getting scores and soundtracks I thought was very poetic, obviously, because it's Alex Marzonia, so perfection. But I got to admit, with his whole Tom Hanks, Tom Cruise mix-up, I did the exact same thing. I was watching it. I went, oh, it's Big. And then they were like, Tom Cruise. It's like, oh, God, no, that's Tom Hanks. So I literally did the exact same thing. So, Alex, I get it. I forgive you. But, yeah, going after his round 2, being in a 5-point deficit, rough. But kudos to Chris for rocking out that Marvel and getting that 2-point steal. Scary stuff in round 2.
Andrew, picking up 10 points in round 2 with a big 2-point steal, holding your throw with your category. Like, it's all good for Chris at this stage.
I mean, you would be forgiven at this point in the matchup for thinking that this is a runaway, that it's really starting to go in the direction of Chris Adams. And the way he's played to this point, yeah, a miss or two in round number 1, but then a perfect round number 2, admittedly in a Marvel category that had a few lead actors. Maybe he got a toss-up with at least one of these, but you take the points when you can get them. And then on top of that big steal from Alex Marzonia. Once again, Alex, this is where I would normally get on you about not using your repeat to rehear. Maybe think, what actor was it? Was it Tom Sizemore? Was it Tom Savini? No, you have to figure that out. But again, Alex, apparently you had some sixth sense. You know what you're doing. We will, again, come back to that. Good round for Chris Adams here. And usually, as Jill says, 5 points, that 5-6 point line, we've talked about that on this show before as well, Keith. That's where you don't want to be. Doesn't look good if you're not Chris Adams going into round number 3, but we'll find out what happens.
Let's move into round 3. It's all on Alex. He has to burn 2 of his 3 questions straight away at the minimum to get back into this. Biopics, gets Joaquin Phoenix as Johnny Cash and Walk the Line, gets the 3-pointer in the category of Meryl Streep, knowing that The Iron Lady is the movie that she won her 3rd Oscar for, portraying Maggie Thatcher. And then it's on Chris. And with respect, and I mean this respectfully, we start to see the old things happening in Chris Adams' career so far. He misses his 2 in the category of 80s, this 88 sports comedy sequel, Caddyshack 2. He's 0-3 in 2-pointers in the 3rd round this season. Gets his 3-pointer. Matt and Ben knows that the character in A Sum of All Fears is Jack Ryan. And then it is a battle of the 5s. Alex has 5. Spike Lee, how many films have Denzel and Spike Lee collaborated on? There's almost sort of a callback to his first match with Aaron when he pulled the gravity pull out of his ass on that one. Comes up with the answer of 4. Gets it right. And then it's all on Chris again. Pixar, which comedian provides the voice of Francis in A Bug's Life? Dennis Leary being the correct answer. He's saying Danny DeVito, missing his another round 3 question. He's 2 of 8 this season in round 3. And your winner, 21-19. And Andrew, Alex got away with a few bits, but he still held firm in the pocket when he needed to in round 3.
That's right. You have a player in Alex who always plays it friendly, he always plays it calm, and he always plays it cool. So much so that he held back. He held on to not just his throw, Keith, but he held on to all of his JTE rules. And this is what I was talking about, because he gets to the end, he takes his time, he stacks them up 1, 2, 3 repeats in a row. Use all of that big time, put it in your brain, calculate the answer, and you know what it is. That gives him the points he needs to take the win, as Chris Adams cannot once again return at the end of round number 3. And Alex Marzonia, I got to say, it was very well played by you. I think you could have scraped some points earlier, but it's about even to the ones that you get here on your 5. So either way you played it, you're going to come out with the victory. And I was very, very impressed. Not to say Chris Adams didn't play a great game. He just, once again, got almost all the way to the finish line and then tripped over a rock or something and couldn't quite close it out.
Jill, obviously, Chris is distraught. He doesn't turn up to his post-match interview. Listen, the facts are there, unfortunately. I've said it. He's 2 of 8 questions in round 3 across 3 matches this season. It's not a good return. And if he wants to be a top competitor in this league, these are the moments that you need to close out. You know this. You've seen big time matches. You've been involved in these, in the background, waiting, taking notes, and to ask these hard questions, because that's what we have to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was definitely, I mean, it was rough. And in terms with Alex, it proves that you should never give up when you're down in a deficit, because things like this can happen where, oh man, now I got the W. So, but it was rough. And to hear that Chris really hasn't been doing great in those round 3s, he really has to analyze what his strategy is going into his next match, because clearly something is not working where he keeps, hitting a rock wall when getting into these round 3 questions. So he really needs to sit back and analyze, okay, what do I need to change in my study tactics? What do I need to do to improve in this? Because something is amiss here, because we all know that Chris can pull it off. We know how great he is. We know how much he studies, but something clearly needs to be tweaked here to where he can start nailing these round 3s.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew, do you see Marzonia as a top 6 rank competitor?
I mean, the way he's been playing so far, I think he's definitely got to be considered to be at least near to that level of competition. I would think he's playing. I think you have the numbers and you know them better than I do, Keith, but he's played very, very, very solidly in the matches that we've seen so far. He's obviously got a winning record all the way down. No real problems there. I think Alex Marzona, if he's not inside the house yet, if he's not in that top 6 party, he's at the door. He's knocking. He's coming in. That's what Alex Marzona looks like to me right now.
So that ends Chris Adams' story for now, which we will get back to later on. But listen, as our co-host and buddy Ryan Permerson, who can't be here this week, said last week, FCL21 and FCL can officially drink now legally. So let's move on to the main event with the big sauce, the main sauce of the evening. Maxwell Haddad, Robert Adams. Jill, I have to come to you. This was what we like to call in Ireland a top club banger before we were about to kick in. I think you probably had similar views, yeah?
Cheers to that. Yeah, this was what a card this match is. 2 complete heavy hitters who have been around the game for years and know exactly what they're doing. They know Schmoedown. And this card, I went into it so freaking excited because it really could have gone either way. And it's one of those matches where I would not have been surprised if there was overtime, if it was just head to head the entire time. And we got a great match out of this, and boy, was it a good one.
Let's move into round 1. It finishes 7-6 to Maxwell. He misses the first question in animated, the director of South Park, Bigger, Longer, Uncut. He says Stone and Parker, but it just being Trey Parker being the answer. Adams misses question number 5, which is the dramas, the Robert Duvall, Robert Downey Jr. 2014 film, The Judge, and he also missed the director question at the end, Nancy Meyers directing Parent Trap, What Women Want, and the intern saying Stephanie Meyers, the author of Twilight, I believe. Not my jam, so I apologize. There's some other nice questions in between here. Walter Matthau is asked in family films, Get Smart, Johnny Depp and Public Enemies. 7-6, Maxwell's keeping with his league average of the year of 7. Robert is below his of 7 also. But Andrew, all in all, it's a tight round played by both. And the only thing I would say is I thought that Robert maybe should have gotten the Judge question on the basis that Downey Jr.'s career post-Ironman is a bit light, or am I being too harsh?
I don't know if you're being too harsh to Robert Downey Jr. There were a few misses in there, and I can't think of a lot of things that are jumping to mind as giant successes, maybe outside of the Sherlock series. But in this matchup, if we're talking about the competitors here, I thought, they both did play well, as you said. I think maybe I might harp on Adams a little bit here. Maybe he could have taken some more time. I think he's the one on this one who's bordering on that question. Every first round, we see someone, when there's a miss, who's right on the edge of the question. You know how close they are. I think maybe this is a time to use a repeat. Might have helped them, might have got one more point out of it. But both guys playing well. As you said, if you look at their averages, this is just about what we expected, down by about a half a point off of the average. we knew this was what was going to happen, and we know this is what's going to happen through the whole match. Big PPE coming out of these guys. They're going to earn the points on the board. You know they've both studied for it. You know they're serious. And this is the kind of first round you get out of that. Maybe both guys are kicking themselves a little bit, though, on that one question, saying, I could have gotten that if I thought about it a little bit differently. Who knows? Either way, great start to the match.
Jill, the wheel round is probably the one round that is dissected and scientifically looked at so much. And in the FCL, there's another layer of strategy in the sense that competitors only get to put one slice on, not two, as in the main leagues. In terms of that, if you're a competitor, do you think that you go for your own knockout slice, or do you pick something that maybe trips up your opponent, or what's the play if there is a play?
I mean, it really depends on your opponent. It's one of those things that you really have to study what your opponent can do. If it's one of those opponents where they just happen to be good or decently fine with all the slices, then you would go for what your prime strength is. But if it's one where you're like, I've seen you answer these questions before, I know you can't hit these, I'm going to put your weakness on the slice. So for FCL, I think it's more difficult in the Schmoedown necessarily, because you really have to study your competitors, because that's going to decide if you put on your strength or their weakness in that wheel round.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose there's such limited tape on everybody that people are just scouring Twitter feeds or random podcasts to just get anything.
Letterboxes. What have you been watching recently?
So listen, let's talk the round two. Maxwell decides to go first. He wants to be aggressive, wants to put the points on the board, wants to put Robert on the back foot. Gets holiday films on his first spin, decides he doesn't want to take that, and on the second one gets movie quotes. Goes 6 of 8, knows that Dead Poets Society, knows The Graduate, knows This Is Spinal Tap. And then this last question in the James Bond franchise, who is the first character to say shaken, not stirred? Gets a repeat in. He's a bit unsure of the question a little bit. On the multiple choice, says James Bond, the answer being Dr. No, Robert getting the steal back. Maxwell has, in his previous 2 matches, given up a steal opportunity each time. So this is potentially something that he needs to look at, but being a little bit tighter in round 2 potentially. And this is what we're all learning as pundits as they're playing more matches, because it's easy to look at Ben and Dan and all these great competitors and know what they do, but we don't know what these guys are doing because it's such a small sample size. On Robert's spin, first one gets Robert Redford, decides he doesn't want to take it and gets remakes, reboots. Also goes 6 of 8. Knows Tim Burton directed 2001 Planet of the Apes. Knows Hairspray's 2017 Travolta Walken movie. Knows The Magnificent Seven from Antoine Fuqua. And then this last question again, how many versions of A Star Is Born has been made? Knows that Maxwell knows the answer to this. Goes down to multiple choice. Says 5. Maxwell takes the point back off him. And here we are. We're back in it. We're just where we were, Andrew. You know, it's level pegging is still, and Maxwell is still up by the 1.
Well, I mean, that 1 point is going to be a good one for Maxwell. I'm very impressed. Both guys this round, I think, played it very, very well. I think they went to multiple. Obviously, going to multiple is a great choice. Even if you know you're going to give up that steal to your opponent, going to multiple denies them that extra point in case you don't get it. It gives you a chance to take a 25% shot at it. I thought they're playing it very well. And we've got that 1 point deficit, but these guys are playing so strongly that I think that 1 point has to be a little bit worrying for Robert going into the final round, because I've said that 6 points is an important number. Obviously, 11 points would be important because that closes out the match. But the most important point of all is that first one that takes you over your opponent. Because now, if you can just stay even with them going into round number 3, just get the same questions that they do, you're going to come out with the win. There's no sudden death. You've denied that. It's mathematically very unlikely. So if I'm Maxwell, with the way I've been playing and the questions I've been getting, I'm super happy about the position here. If I'm Robert, I'm not out of it, ready to punch my weight and go into round number 3 and hope that Maxwell misses one of these. And we'll see as we get there. I love this round.
Jill, something that has come up with us a lot is these questions that are a numbered answer. And do you take the plunge in wagering a guess, or do you go to multiple choice knowing that it's going to be either side, yes or no? What's your view on those kind of questions and answering them?
For me, I have really mixed feelings on these questions, especially when they're worth more points, because it's a lot easier to guess a number than it is to guess like a movie title or an actor name. So I'm really hit or miss when it comes to these questions. But when it comes to a round 2, in my opinion, unless you are 125% confident that you know that answer, you better be going down to multiple choice. Because if you guess 3, then the other person's going to go, okay, well, it's most likely either 2 or 4 because it's probably going to be around that number. So it gives them more of an edge to steal 2 points from you instead of potentially just stealing the 1. So in my opinion, if it's a round 2 and you are at 125% completely confident in that answer, always go down to multiple. But again, I'm really, really kind of hit or miss on these questions, especially when it comes to the round 3 questions. I personally don't think a number question should be a 5 or a 3-pointer, in my own personal opinion, but I'm not a question writer, so what do I know?
Let's get into the questions in round 3. It's on Robert in his 2. Tom Cruise, who directed Jerry Maguire? Cameron Crowe comes back to Maxwell. Category of 70s. Michael Myers is the evil killer in what 78 movie? Halloween. We're back into the 3s. In 80s, Winona Ryder and Shannon Doherty featuring this crime comedy about a clique in an Iowa high school. Heather's being the answer. Sorry, I'm Irish. I'm not great with these American states.
Fine.
I apologize to all our
Weird
audience.
names. We have weird state names. It's totally fine.
So then we move back to Maxwell on his 3 in Pixar, who is the voice actor of Anton Ego in Ratatouille, Peter O'Toole. It's the Battle of the Fives. Robert's 5, 2010s. Martin Scorsese nominated for Oscars for 3 films in the 2010s. Name 2. Runs down every second available with his repeats and then pulls out The Irishman and Wolf of Wall Street and then pings it back to Maxwell. It's all on him. You know, you've got the ball, take the shot, take the win. Comedies, what 2006 film does a young girl called Olive perform a dance to the song Super Freak at a talent show? Little Miss Sunshine, and your winner, 24-23. Robert moves to 1 and 2, Jill, but it's probably the best he's played of the 3 matches so far this season, I think.
I 100% agree. And while Robert didn't get the W in this, he has nothing to hang his head about. He played a great game. They were literally neck and neck the entire time. It came down to 1 point. Like, that is nothing to sneeze at. You know, he played great. And if he continues this the way he plays, he's going to go far. He just happened to run into a Maxwell Haddad today, as he always likes me to say his last name, Haddad. So if he had played anyone other than Maxwell today, he probably would have gotten the win. He just happens to run into a Little Miss Sunshine brick wall. But it was a great match. And like I said, he has absolutely nothing to hang his head at.
Andrew, Robert has contrasting fortunes in round 3 to his brother in the sense that he's 7 of 7 in round 3 this season in the FCL. But listen, it's all about Maxwell. 24 points, a good solid win, well played, and calls out Travis Fishburne, wants the tash, wants the head of the travesty. What do you make of that matchup potentially?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, let me just say about Robert Adams, this is the kind of matchup where you come out of it with a loss, and yet you're somehow announcing yourself as a greater competitor than we already knew you were. Kudos to you. This is an incredibly played matchup, and I am not going to take anything away from what you did. I loved your strategy. I loved how calm you stayed. I loved the way you were taking those points down. Just ran into it, as we already said today. Maxwell Haddad, looking strong, looking confident. Not that Maxwell Haddad has ever lacked in confidence that we have seen.
You don't say.
No.
Maxwell, confidence, what?
I think Maxwell might just be the kind of person where if you could bottle that confidence and sell it on supermarket stores, a lot of people would be getting out of the house a lot more, going out to see movies, asking that girl on the corner out, whatever it is that you got to do. Maxwell is never short of confidence. And if he weren't playing as well as he was, I'd say maybe he's biting off more than he can chew. We've seen what Travis Fishburne can do in the ring. Travis Fishburne has been consistently competitive in every match he's been in. He's answered big questions. He's put up a lot of points. I would be afraid of this kind of competitor, and that's why Maxwell has to make a move like this. If you want to be taken seriously in a league where the top 2 or 3 players right now are playing just shy of perfect. Literally 1 or 2 or 3 questions over multiple matches is all that they have missed. So Maxwell Haddad is not going to wait for his chance. He's going to make his own chance. He's going to go after Travis Fishburne. This is a matchup that has me very excited. I can't wait to sit down and see what these two guys will do against each other, especially with the trash talk. Can you imagine these two guys? I mean, they're going to be nice, they're going to be polite, but there's going to be a few barbs fired across that table. It's going to be all polite in the eyes, but in the mind, they'll be trying to shoot daggers at each other. That's right. That's called mind bullets, Kyle.
You know, it's a great call out, and I think it's the natural move. I think, and Maxwell obviously took the L to Montana, so why not take on the other person who's undefeated in the league? I think, but we got one last little clip. In Robert's post-match interview, obviously Chris was brought up, his behavior, his ungentlemanlike behavior. We got a little cutscene of Robert going to find Chris, and they kind of fleshed out, you know, their differences, and you know how one wasn't there to kind of support the other. This is a singles league. This isn't a teams league. This isn't a faction war. They're all in it kind of for themselves so far. And then Chris Adams comes back, takes his interview from the first match, and says, "Give me my brother." Jill, this has been building for 21 weeks, and now finally the call out of Adams v. Adams. Do you like this potential fight?
Who wouldn't like this potential fight? Like, I feel like for the FCL, this is like the Damon versus Damon of the FCL. You know, it's like we're finally getting Adams versus Adams. It was bound to happen. It was going to happen eventually, and now we are finally getting it. This is going to be... obviously it's like this should be a pay-per-view event, to be honest. Like, it's the Adams brothers, it's the Cine Fanatics. They're the ones who I'll say it, they're the reason why we have an FCL, because people want to see the Cine Fanatics. They didn't get drafted in the Schmoedown, and people were like, we need them somewhere, we need to build this league. And so they're running the FCL, they know what they're doing, and now we are getting them in a head-on-head match. I do not want to be in that household when it goes down, because Lord, there's going to be fireworks. But it's going to be a great match, and I'm very excited to check it out.
Andrew, if it does happen and Brad does give in to Chris's demands, I'm very much in the camp that Robert is going to take that one and put him away quite easily. What were your initial thoughts on the potential matchup of Adams v. Adams?
I mean, I'm potential initial thoughts. First and foremost, excited, obviously. This has been something that's been built up in the FCL since the very beginning. We've all, if you're a fan of old school wrestling, especially if you know how these things work out, you were waiting for this. You knew eventually something's going to come down the line. We're finally here. We're staring down the barrel of it. I don't know. I just got to say, if I'm Chris Adams, I think maybe my plan to take on my brother is about as underdeveloped as my upper lip, because at this point, somebody needs to bust out that caution tape they used to make the outline for Marzonia, because Robert murdered Chris in that gazebo. He told him, you are the one who's ruining everything for yourself. You're the one who's bringing yourself down. I know you're taking things from me. I know you're coming after me. It's hard to be so full of yourself when you're the one who's making all the mistakes. And Robert pointed that out so succinctly to Chris. I think if you look at it by the numbers, purely by the numbers, you're going to say exactly the same thing is going to happen when these two get in the ring. Robert is going to once again lay out for his brother exactly how things are, exactly the way it is. He's going to take the win, and he's going to say this is always what was going to happen. But you never know what kind of motivation is put into a person's soul when they're going against their own brother, against someone who is getting more accolades from people like us who we are talking about in a greater light. He's going to be ready to come after Robert. Chris is going to be fired up like I can't even imagine. And I got to agree with one thing that Jill said, absolutely, and 100% across the board. I do not want to sit at the dinner table at the Adams household anytime soon.
And with that, we close the book on FCL21. And at the time of recording, we unfortunately do not know what the card is next week on FCL22. So, Andrew, why don't you see us out for another week?
Folks, fans, and of course, all you thirsty firsties out there, it's been a fabulous time having you here with us on This Week in the FCL. We're always here to break down all of the action, all of the matches, and all the news coming your way out of the FCL. You can check us out on podcast if you're not doing so already. We're on Anchor, Spotify, all the places you find your podcast. Go ahead, check that one out. Of course, I am the Elk. Always here. Lovely timing by our guest, Ed by Keith. Well done. I am the Elk. I'm always here breaking it down for you. You can find me on Twitter at CalcAndrew. We're going to go around now and tell you where you can find everybody on our lovely panel today. Keith, where can people find you?
Twitter and Instagram at Cake Media, and check me out on the Opening Pair YouTube channel. This week we dropped our retro review of 8 Mile starring Eminem, Brittany Murphy, may she rest in peace, and Kim Basinger, to mention a few.
All right. And of course, our lovely guest. It's been a pleasure having you, getting to talk to you and meet you a little bit. Jillian Marie. She is, of course, on Certain Point of View. She's the co-host over there. You can check her out sometimes on the Schmoedown. What else have you got going on, Jill?
Yeah, you can catch me on Twitter and Instagram, Jillian Marie. That's 2 Y's, 2 E's. Yeah, Certain Point of View. We do Schmoedown reactions. You have a main show on Sunday. We also have a fun little monthly show called Happy Hour with Jill and Molly. Our September guests, if we can lock down a date, is going to be a doozy. So make sure to tune in for that. And then you can also catch me sometimes doing some post interviews for your favorite Schmoedown matches.
Well, it has been a pleasure having you here with us, Jill. Wonderful to have you break down all that action. And next week, of course, we will be back. There may or may not be a guest, but I'll be here. Keith will be here, and maybe some other folks as well. Thank you once again. And remember, if you haven't checked them out already, you want to learn about Maxwell, Haddad, or a number of other Schmoedown FCL competitors, we have done our Spotlight series here from this week in the FCL. Those are all available on our channel. Thank you all once again. It's been a great time, and we'll see you all next week as we once again break down everything that happened this week in the FCL.